Hi, everyone. Today, I'd like to welcome you and my guest, David Meerman Scott. David is a top marketing speaker, strategist, investor, and advisor. He is a best-selling author of 12 books, including Fanocracy and the New Rules of Marketing and PR. The first edition of the New Rules was published in 2007 when I was an entrepreneur trying to grow my local print and online advertising company. After reading his section on how to generate free press, I was able to get my business covered in the Orlando Sentinel here, on TV, and on the radio. It is my pleasure today to introduce you all to David Meerman Scott. Thank you for taking the time.
Hey, it's great to be here. And wow, I didn't realize that my ideas helped you in that specific way. Congratulations on, and back then, 2008, getting into those publications. And it's super cool.
Thank you. So I have a number of questions for you today. And if you're ready, we can jump in.
Let's do it.
So as I mentioned, I ran a business actually for 4 years. I started out as an entrepreneur. I sold that business in 2008. Your book was one of the things that not only helped me in that business, but really inspired me to get into marketing. I was wondering, how did you get into marketing?
I kind of drifted into marketing myself. I got my start on a bond trading desk. I hated bond trading, but I loved the information behind bond trading. So I worked for companies in the financial information business. And I was raised my hand and volunteered to move to Tokyo to become the head of the Asian operation of Wall Street Economic Consulting Company. I was 26 years old, and my main job was to sell. And I realized that when I'm starting a new business like that, that marketing was just important. So I had to learn, like you, had to learn while I was going. And turns out I loved marketing. So I ended up spending the rest of my career when I was working for companies, about another decade, in marketing for financial information companies like Thomson Reuters and Dow Jones. And so that allowed me to understand as well this idea of online marketing, because the services I was marketing were online services. So I kind of had an early head start on that.
I always like to ask this question to fellow marketers, but how do you define marketing? What makes someone good at it?
Marketing to me is understanding buyers and helping them to solve their problems. And I think what makes people good is that the vast majority of marketers and salespeople too, by the way, spend way, way, way more time talking about themselves, about their products, about their services, about their company, and not enough understanding the needs of the buyers. So I think a good marketer is one who starts from the perspective of the people they're trying to reach. I love the term buyer personas. There's actually a chapter in the New Rules of Marketing and PR, and have been all 8 editions on buyer personas. And it's the idea of understanding distinct groups of buyers so that you can reach them. I'm a surfer, for example, and you can see over here, I've got a surfboard behind me. And I'm also care about the environment. So here's a unique buyer persona, me, a surfer who cares about the environment. And turns out there's tons of us. And that's how Grain Surfboards does its marketing. It's a wooden surfboard company. They're not trying to reach every surfer in the world. They're not trying to reach every person who cares about the environment in the world. They're looking for that unique buyer persona, tens of thousands of people who care about both. They care about surfing and the environment.
So New Rules is now in its 8th edition, as you mentioned. What keeps you updating the book?
It's funny. The first edition came out in 2007, right before you bought an edition. And I was writing it in 2005 and 2006. The manuscript was due to my publisher at the end of 2006. The book came out in the middle of 2007. And as I was writing the book, Twitter didn't exist. Facebook had just gotten started, but was only available to college students. So in the first edition of the book, I didn't write about Twitter because at the time it didn't exist. And when it came out, Twitter did exist when the book came out. So people wrote to me and said, David, I really liked your book, but you should have talked about Twitter. And I'm like, it didn't exist when I was writing. So I realized that I needed to continue to update the ideas. Fortunately, the book did super well from the very beginning. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies in the first few editions, so that there was a demand to continue to update the book. The book is used, New Rules of Marketing and PR is used in hundreds of different universities and colleges around the world. Lots of companies have adopted it as their primary text as well. And so I constantly have to look at two things. Number one, what are the new tools that are out there that I need to talk about? So the second edition, it was all about Twitter and some other tools like that. Also, some tools go away. I think it might have been the third edition. I wrote about Google Plus, and I think it was the sixth or seventh edition. Google Plus didn't exist anymore. So that one went full circle from, oh my gosh, you got to write about it because Google now has a social network, to, oh my gosh, now I have to write about it because Google closed that social network. So the second thing that I focus on are new stories, new examples of success, because it's really important to me and I have something like 50 examples of success in the book, to talk about how people have used the ideas, not just here's how you do marketing. And I'll give you an example from the new edition. There's a lawyer named Russell Alexander, and Russ is a lawyer in Canada, just outside Toronto. He's got several different law offices, and they focus on family law. And when the pandemic hit, there were all kinds of questions about family law in the pandemic. So, for example, if two divorced parents share custody of a child, and one of the parents says, I'm not going to bring the child to you because I'm afraid that you will give the child COVID, what's the law around that? So Russ started to create tons of content about this idea of COVID-19 and family law, posted them on his website. This is a term I call newsjacking, and it's a term I pioneered. It's now in the Oxford English Dictionary. So Russ was doing newsjacking, which is creating real-time content based on what's going on in the news. And it became so important to his business that it grew, but he grew his business by 30%. When other lawyers were laying off lawyers, he actually had to hire 5 new attorneys. So always new stories in the book, like the Russell Alexander story, that I'm trying to focus so that people can learn from others' success, not just trying to grasp these ideas without putting them into context.
You always try to include new trends and what's next. The recent edition includes focuses on AI and machine learning.
It does.
I just saw you write a blog about the metaverse. Just was wondering, which trends are you most excited about right now?
I'm still thinking a lot about AI because that's here right now. The metaverse is coming. It's not here yet. It's mainly a lot of hype. There are little pockets of things that you can do to kind of get prepared. However, AI and marketing is here. And marketers definitely need to understand what's going on in the AI space, because there's positives and negatives of artificial intelligence, and we marketers need to understand how that's being used. So first of all, some of the negatives. I believe that the AI that drives the social networks have potential to be dangerous, and especially in the case of Facebook, I believe their AI algorithm is among the most destructive technologies ever invented. And the reason I believe this is because Facebook's AI algorithm rewards polarization. It rewards anger. Because what Facebook has learned is that when people are angry, many of those people spend more time on Facebook. And they look at more of the same kind of content that makes them angry, which is why in our country, the United States, so many people have become polarized. They get angry. They then they then traffic in conspiracy theories, and it's pushing people apart into the red team versus the blue team, and so on, and it's really destructive. So we marketers need to understand how the AI algorithms work in the social networks. Very important, especially if you're using social networks to do your marketing, either advertising or natural content using your own social networks. So the second thing around AI is there's a bunch of positive aspects of it. And I've been using AI myself for my marketing now for many years. And one of my favorite tools is called Lately. And I wrote about that as well in the new edition of the New Rules of Marketing and PR. And what Lately does is it allows you to take long form content, drop it into the Lately AI engine to create short form content. So for example, the way I use it is every time I write a blog post, and I typically blog at least once a week, that might be between, say, 300 words and 1,000 words. More, I average about 500 words. And I drop the 500-word blog post into Lately. Then the AI engine in Lately takes that blog post and creates several, maybe 1 or 2 dozen, between, say, sometimes around 8 and about 25 individual social media posts for me. So one blog post turns into 15 or 20 tweets. And then I can use the AI engine on Lately to then schedule those tweets to go out, once a week or once a day or once every other week, automatically. And it's great because what it's doing is it's allowing me to repurpose my content in a super easy way. And that's something that AI algorithms are really good at doing. So marketers need to be thinking about how AI can help them, and also some of the negative aspects of AI.
Talking about content, you mentioned Lately, with content marketing so mainstream now, how do you go about rising above the noise and getting traction in the marketplace for your ideas?
Well, a couple of things, and I've actually talked about a few of them. First of all, you got to understand your buyers super well. And so creating content that will be interesting for your buyers is really important. That is one way to help you rise above the noise. I mentioned Grain Surfboards. They have a fabulous Instagram feed that people really like. They have a wonderful website. So, that allows you to break through when you're creating the content that's going to be valuable for the people you're trying to reach. I also think it's really, really important, we talked about this, to not just create information about your products and services. That just doesn't work so well, because that in that case, it is a crowded marketplace if you're talking yet again about your products and yet again about your services. I think that real-time content, as well as the concept of newsjacking that I just mentioned, that's also a way that content can still break through. Really interesting that very few marketers operate in real time. Very few marketers create instant content in the form of, say, a blog post or a YouTube video or a social media post with an appropriate hashtag. Very few marketers are creating that content when the moment is right. So going back to Russell Alexander, the lawyer in Canada, when the whole marketplace wanted to know what are the laws around families and COVID-19, he was there. He pushed out the content when the moment was right. He pushed out the content when the media was interested, when potential customers of his were interested. And the other lawyers weren't doing that. And that became super valuable. That's a tool I use myself, is pushing out content when the moment's right. Because if you think about it, most marketers do content marketing on their time. They create a blog post when they're ready. They create an email newsletter when they're ready. They promote a new product when they're ready. The idea of real time and the idea of newsjacking turns that around and allows a marketer to create content when the market is ready. Utterly different approaches to getting content out there.
As an advisor to companies, I was wondering, what are some of the business challenges you're hearing about lately? Would love to hear what's coming across your desk and maybe some of the suggestions around those that you've been given.
Yeah, a lot of people are struggling with how to integrate marketing and sales, how to make marketing and sales work as one. And especially on the web, I see that there's a convergence of marketing and sales and customer support and public relations. Back in the day prior to the web, 20 years or more ago, those were pretty much separate disciplines. And marketers looked at the, if you think about it from the old school funnel approach, marketers looked at the top of the funnel, salespeople looked to how they close near the bottom of the funnel. And then once they became a customer, then they were thrown over to the customer support department. I believe that there's a convergence of all those things right now. And I think it's really important that the content that you create, the marketing that you do, the information that you're producing and publishing can be used over the entire lifespan of how you interact with existing and potential customers. And I think the best way to think about this is that marketing is how an organization reaches many people at once, whereas sales is how an organization reaches one buyer at a time. And then then customer support is when it becomes an existing customer, how you're relating to that existing customer, again, one customer at a time, and thinking about then how you can continually engage with that customer so that they become your fan. That's a title of a book I put out a couple of years ago. Is called Fanocracy. It's the whole idea of understanding how to build fans of a product or service or idea or company or person. Because once you've got fans, that's the ultimate. And it's difficult to get fans, but that is the ultimate. And it seems like the companies that I'm working with and that I'm advising and that I have an experience being able to communicate with, that when they do integrate seamlessly marketing, sales, customer support, public relations, all those disciplines, such that it feels like the way they're interacting with existing and potential customers feels like a holistic approach, that tends to work better.
As I understand it, starting in around 2014, you were featured in Tony Robbins' Business Mastery Seminar. You did marketing mastery. And I was wondering how that opportunity came about, and maybe if you could tell us what you learned from being a part of that.
Yeah, I've done between 2 and 4 business mastery events every year for 8 years. It's fabulous. Tony's an awesome guy. He is an unbelievable speaker. He's unbelievable at how he helps people. And I've become a big Tony Robbins fan myself. Tony read one of my books, and when they were looking to start a new program, Business Mastery, it was a new program for them about a decade ago. They were looking for somebody that they could bring in that could be part of Business Mastery and do a 2-hour presentation on marketing. Business Mastery is a 5-day program. And it had been in person through 2019. It's gone virtual for the last couple of years. And as part of that as part of that 5-day program, there's a guest speaker each day. And so I'm one of the guest speakers. I speak about marketing. And it was great that Tony read one of my books, that they invited me to come and do a presentation way back in 2014. And it worked out well. People liked my presentation, so they've continued to invite me back, which I appreciate. And I love it. I love it because the audience is so enthusiastic. I love it because most of the people who are there are entrepreneurs. They're there because they want to be there. They're there because they can find ideas that will help them to grow their business. And Tony, plus the other guest speakers, just provide a huge wealth of ideas for how businesses can thrive. And it's a hell of a lot of fun as well to speak on the stage, but also to be a participant in that program.
So final question I have for you, David, is what's next for David Meerman Scott?
I think a lot about my career arc, and I think I've just entered the final third of my life, and the first third of my life I consider as my learning phase. So I was learning when I was in school. I was learning when I first got a job, and learning about what it's like to have a job and to work, and learning about marketing and so on. The second third of my life was about accumulation and acquisition. I was acquiring skills. I acquired a family. I acquired financial assets. I acquired a home and so on. And I'm just now entering a new phase, I believe, of my life where I'm focused on giving back in many different ways. And, just a tiny part of that is being here on this podcast, and being able to have a conversation with you, Aaron, and the people who are listening in. I'm giving back by volunteering a significant amount of my time with Seth Godin, and we've created a new book which is coming out in mid-July. It's called the Carbon Almanac, and it's focused on providing facts about carbon and global warming, and how it's not too late to save the planet. And that was a 100% volunteer effort. I've donated significant amount of money, and I've gone every year for the past decade down to Panama, where I'm part of a consortium of people who purchased 12,000 acres and to create a nature preserve in one of the most important areas of the planet. I give back by sometimes Zooming in, or even recently it hasn't been because of the pandemic, but in person, speaking to school groups about business and about marketing. So that's what I'm focused on for the remainder of the time that I have on this earth.
Wow, that is powerful stuff. And I want to thank you for your contribution, and your contribution to this interview, your contribution to my career. And I truly appreciate you joining me today. Thank you for the insights and for inspiring a whole new wave of marketers and entrepreneurs out there. I wish you great success with the 8th edition and everything that you're doing with Seth Godin as well. Thank you for the time.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Aaron. I really appreciate it. And I'm super glad to hear that some of my ideas helped you. I'm hopeful that some of my ideas will help others who are listening in today too.